Well, good afternoon and welcome to MedTech Crossroads. It's good to have you here today. I'm Gene Paranak, and today is January 15th, second show for the new year, episode 41. We're glad to have you here. Today, we have, as usual, our COVID Connect segment, all about the COVID news, to which last week we started adding vaccine info. So we're going to talk more on that today. We've got some cool new info. We want to give you a quick update on the pitch party that we announced last week and how you can get connected with that. After that, Walt Young, our local legendary angel investor. I don't even know what to call the guy. He's done everything. And today you're going to get what amounts to a crash course MBA. I'm really looking forward to our discussion with Walt. But first of all, we're going to go to the COVID news. And with that, COVID metrics that we always bring you from covidtracking.com. We are talking about hospitalizations in the US with this slide. We brought to you last week that there are about 924,000 hospital beds in the US. And right now, we appear to be peaking out just north of 120,000 of those occupied with COVID patients. The good news is that last week there wasn't an end in sight for this curve. There may be this week as it starts to peak over the top. So we're excited to see that happening. Regionally, it's a similar picture to what we've showed you before, but a little bit of hope in this picture as the Northeast appears now to be peaking, the Midwest on its way down, the South, well, not yet, and the West may be peaking, as you can see there. Currently hospitalized with COVID-19 per, I believe it's per million residents. We still see a distribution that in the South and West is higher than in other regions of the country, California, Nevada, New Mexico, and other southern states still having a hard go of it, whereas in the North it seems to be at least less. This is some encouraging news as well. We have the graph from last week where we had to report that 44 states had cases rising. But now that's only 14 states, staying the same in 32 states and falling in 10 states. As we always do in Michigan, here's the data. Most interesting one is the currently hospitalized number. That's probably why you're hearing lots of rumors about things starting to reopen further. But that number is currently dropping nicely. And as we've always mentioned, the deaths seem to have not hit the peaks that they hit in the spring, which is very encouraging based on what we've learned from our friends in healthcare, who really learned how to triage this over the course of the pandemic thus far. And so even though we've had higher hospitalizations, we've actually had slightly lower deaths than in the spring. So as always, our hat goes off to those who've been doing the research and doing the frontline healthcare work to deal with these emergent situations. Well, you all asked last week, what about the vaccines and where can we get vaccine distribution data? I am pleased to report that we have a couple of sources now. The first of those is from our friends at MLive for the state of Michigan, and they have been doing a nice job of tracking Michigan's numbers. This is per 10,000 residents. Darker is better. Darker is more vaccinations. And as you can see, it's actually been higher numbers of vaccinations per 10,000 in the UP and Northwest Michigan. Washtenaw County and Kent County have been standouts in terms of getting that rolled out per 10,000 people. Still more work to be done elsewhere in the state because it's sort of lagging in the rest of the state. A couple of highlight statements from MLive. Michigan has received 831,000 vaccines to date, doses to date. Of that, they've reserved 245,000 for long-term care residents and staff. And as of Tuesday, 50,000 or a fifth of those had been immunized through that program. Of the remaining nearly 600,000 doses, just over 300,000 have been administered as of Wednesday. And more than half of the people who received a shot have received it in the past 8 days. So that would be an indication that the rate of vaccinations is going up. This from the New York Times. How's the vaccine rollout going in your state? this may sort of be a false attribution to say that North Dakota, South Dakota, and West Virginia are ahead. They're doing this in numbers that are similar to other states. But if you look at those numbers, you'll see states all over the place. States like South Dakota and North Dakota have given out 60 some percent of what they've been allocated. West Virginia, 74% of what they've been allocated. We have to go a ways down here to find states like Michigan. We are currently at 42% of doses used. Overall in the US, there's apparently 30 million doses been distributed and about 11 million shots that have been given. So that's where we stand nationally as well as in some of the states there. So we got that to you based on the questions last week. If you have any questions later, we'll be happy to field those at the end of the show. I want to touch on this really briefly, which is the MedTech Crossroads pitch party, which we announced last week. We've always said we have a great time talking with manufacturers and doctors and investors and folks in business development and service providers, innovators. We always have a hard time, how do we involve the startups? And so last week we said, we're going to start doing an informal pitch party. Maybe we won't call it a competition. We're calling it a party. It's going to start on February 5th. And we've always said the price of admission to MedTech Crossroads is education and making connections. So with that, the plan in a condensed form here, it's going to start on February 5th. We already have a few companies signed up. US-based MedTech startups are eligible for consideration regardless of their stage. We're going to try to keep similar stage companies together, but one startup per week is going to pitch at the end of MedTech Crossroads for 10 minutes. And at the last show of the month, we're going to have a panel of local community judges who are more than anything going to talk about what they liked, what they didn't like, try to educate us on how should we be thinking about these startups, what kind of questions should they be asking, what did they do well. And that panel of judges, independent of Into Being will not have a role in that judging, is going to pick one of those startups for a $1,000 prize, which we'll send at the end of the month to that startup that was selected. You can send pitch decks to pitchparty@medtechcrossroads.org to be eligible for selection for that. And we'll select 3 to 4 startups per month for the pitch party. Make sure that you've got customary elements of a pitch deck in there so that we make sure that you cover the kinds of things that our judges are going to want to hear about. Those are listed at the bottom, but send those pitch decks to pitchparty@medtechcrossroads.org, and we will look forward to February 5th for our kickoff of that. Well, with that, we wanted to save a lot of time for our guest. And if I can get the screen share to stop, we will move over and welcome our first guest, who is Walt Young. Walt, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here, Gene.
Good to have you, sir. And I want to get you introduced to our audience. Many folks here know Walt. He's been in business. You made your money in business, and then you started a whole second career. And I don't know whether to call you an angel investor or Mr. Chairman or just what, but you have done so many things, especially in our local community, and so many cool companies. Why don't you give us just a little background, Walt, about the kinds of things that you've done in your career and are doing now?
How far back?
Okay,
I had a long, oral phase. I was a preacher's kid, Eagle Scout, paper boy. Anyhow, we'll skip to that. 34 years I was with 4 different public companies. And I was sort of either the CEO or a group manager, group executive VP. And so over that period of 34 years and 4 public companies, I evolved to doing turnarounds. And so I probably did 23 turnarounds that I could talk about. One I won't, okay? You learn from your failures. But then, so that ended about 2003. And then what am I going to do with myself at a young age? And I tried golf, and I was terrible at golf. And so I found out that startups are the same skills as turnarounds. And so I had the same skill set, crisis manager, talent scout, um, and change catalyst are the words that really came around that I've been doing for 34 years. And lo and behold, it was the same for startups, Gene. So I'll shut up.
No, I love the way that you phrase that, because those of us who work with startups, we can recognize what you just said, which is that the things that you would see in a turnaround situation are the constant life experience of a startup. They're constantly reinventing themselves. They have to be ready to pivot, and if they're not willing to, it's often a death knell for them.
But it has a lot of, during my public experience, on the turnarounds, if I didn't have a natural crisis, I would make one, because it makes the organization more focused and urgent. So even though you don't have a crisis, which in startups, you always have one, it's better to have a crisis mode. So I got into use, if I didn't find a crisis, damn, I'd make one up.
What sorts of things, how do you view that? I mean, a lot of people would say, oh, I don't need to manufacture stuff here. What kinds of things would happen there for your thinking?
You mean, how did I cause crisis?
Yeah, how do you cause a crisis? This is, we're already into like the, whoa, what is Walt saying?
No, you can have a redirection, a panic, and there's usually always some underlying problems in any entity. Okay. And so you can find them and you just focus around them to cause a sense of focus and urgency. And then you get better results. But I got so good at crisis, I got used to managing during them, and usually turned out very well.
I think it's one thing we've all noticed during the COVID pandemic. At the early part of it, I think many of us were surprised how focused we became, right?
Exactly.
It was something that actually focused the mind. And then as it drug on and on, it's like, well, what's the next thing that's going to motivate us and really get us off of our chairs? So I hear where you're coming from on that.
Some of my fellow directors, I
ahead.
have like 5, at that stage, I had 6 different companies. So I put out one memo of 3 things that the president should do and 3 things that the board would be involved in on March 13th. Because it was a focus right off the bat. There were things the CEO did that the board couldn't move fast enough and should stay out of.
It's interesting. So you actually managed to sell one of your investments during the pandemic. That was a pretty good deal.
Yeah, that was a new experience.
Yeah, well, M&A in a pandemic. Tell us a little bit about some of the local stories that in the MedTech space that you've been a part of.
Hold on, statute of limitations not up.
Okay, yeah, don't say anything you can't say.
The one you're talking about is Celsi. That was with Handy, and Handy and I brought in a commercialization manager 2 years ago. And so that space became so hot and requiring such capital to ramp up commercialization. We started sale talks in late 2019. And so we were in process when the pandemic hit. And we were down to 1 in due diligence. And I was surprised it went through. The Biorad closed on time on the same term. It was on April 1st, but it was exciting to close it during the pandemic. That was before we were all used to Zoom here. But though, no, we'd fill up the screen with attorneys on the closing. but it closed right on time and on terms. They didn't say, oh, by the way, or they got a bargain. It was a win-win-win for everybody. So no, that was exciting, April 1st. But the other two, particularly life science, I got famous or infamous or whatever with Acri back in 2003 and 4. I was one of the two first investors in Acri, and I was on the board all the way through. And so, no, that was a case study. In fact, we did that online for Skip Sims here just a couple months ago. The two CEOs, Jen Baird and Jeff Williams, and Tom Kinnear was the moderator to try to keep us online. But it was a great history, and it was a great exit with BD. It was 200 million, but it was, it was 10 times revenues, but it was 6 or 7 times cash on cash. So you don't have those often.
That's a great story.
But it was a great time on the way up and down. The third one I'm in is still Swift. And it, like Celsi, started, Roger Newton and I really started it together. And then initially in case of Swift, it was David Olson. But it's been 10 years now, and it's going great guns on reagents, mostly in the oncology space. But in the last year, we've got some of the, hold on, what's Jeff telling about me?
There's the link to Jeff Reinfeldt just posted. If you go to michiganangels.org and follow your way down to video presentations, you can get to that session.
It's about 45 minutes long, but it's a good background for the life of a startup.
And that's the Acri story with Jen Baird, who had on the show, and Jeff Williams.
But Swift is doing well, reagent, ramping up revenues. And they're got a piece of the virus business. They got 2 products on testing, one for the Sanger high volume testing machines, and the other is a compatible test with the Regeneron and antibody therapy. So awesome. No, they're going great guns.
Well, those are some wonderful stories that we all know in this community and love. I want everyone to buckle up, though, because I want to get into you, Walt, with some of the things that you've seen. I have rarely talked to somebody who is as clear on what they believe about how businesses succeed. But before we go there, to kick it off, I want to ask you the question that I always ask everybody, and that's, what's your passion? What keeps you doing this? What keeps you in business? And of all things, working with startups, because that is, some people think you have to be insane to do it. What motivates you?
Well, it's basic greed. But it's I enjoy really the whole aspect that the report card is the exit or the success as an operating. Some of my startups are operating. I got 3 of them, and I hope we never sell them. They're not in the life science space, but in the life science space, it's usually an exit for all sorts of reasons. And so, no, I just enjoy the process. It keeps my gray cells going. I told you I can't play golf well. And so it's mental therapy, but it goes back to greed. And I enjoy doing the impossible. And I enjoy now watching other people get results that they never thought they could. And so, no, it's my entertainment. It's my occupation. I have no other alternatives. My wife's worried I'm going to run out of startups because I'm going to start managing her more. So,
That's
no.
very, very
So yeah,
cool.
that's a passion, I guess. I enjoy the puzzle.
Yeah. Oh, as many of us do. I think I've got a friend who, when I first joined a startup that you'd be familiar with, Handy Lab, he looked at me and he said, "Gene, once the startup bug bites you, it never lets
It
go."
does.
And it's amazing.
And we got a number there where it's been. Jeff Williams, how do you say his name? Sandu. Uh,
To do. Yep.
the So we got some real examples in the state. John Stark, he just lives over in Kalamazoo. He ran Celsi, did a great job. He's
Mm.
taking on a big one right now. So no, we got some great examples of serial startup people.
I want to take you, Walt, into these experiences that you had. You started us out with the observation that a turnaround manager in business and a startup leader are
Same
really
thing,
kind of the same talent set, which I think is so
identical,
profound. I think people can study that for years, that one statement, because if you want to learn
different environment
different
and
environment,
different
okay.
external, but internal, it's identical.
You listed when we chatted before 4 areas to talk about that really, in your mind, uh, motivate or enliven this. How do we do this thing? How do we turn companies around? How do we do startups? 4 things you're looking for. Would you be willing to share those with our audience?
Sure, sure. And these are expensive lessons um, over the last 17 years. The And this is really my agenda when I meet with
Mm,
founders in the first place as well. And so it goes to the 4: leadership, number 2, uniqueness of the product and service,
mm.
3 is customer focused with a question mark. Okay. And finally, and this is sort of out of usual, is the adult supervision.
Adult supervision. Okay.
Those are the 4 buckets, if you will, that I go in a sit down session, cover well in an hour, hour and a half. Um, and I listen a lot
Mm,
and ask how so's a lot and shut up. Um, and if the, if the, if that session doesn't pass, I don't go forward.
mm.
Saves a
Trigger
lot of
trigger
time.
these things and then see what what
Saves a
comes
lot
back.
of time. So these are the first 4 gates, if you will,
Mm.
before you get into due diligence.
This is the
You
first
want
meeting. This is the first time we sit down and I say to you,
right.
"Hey, Walt, I've got an idea I want to talk to you about. This is where I'm going to land."
Yep. And so I play Columbo covering these 4 issues, and you talk, and you
Mm,
tell me how you feel about these 4. Then a day later, I tell you if I bought your crap or not.
mm. It's fascinating because when you listed these 4 off in one of the discussions that we had, I thought to myself, I want to hear from Walt about quality of leadership and uniqueness of product or service and how he's thinking about that. And we were sort of ships crossing in the night, and you said, the ones that don't get enough coverage are the need for adult supervision and the customer focus. And I thought, well, then we've got a lesson to learn because what I thought we needed to hear about is not the ones that you thought we most needed to hear about. So today we're going to talk about all 4 of them to make sure we cover all of them. But I just thought it was fascinating. Let's start with quality of leadership. How do you approach this? I'm a startup and I'm thinking, well, I've got a good idea. I think I'm qualified. I'm going to come and I'm going to talk to Walt, but I don't really know what you're looking for. What are the
Well,
attributes here?
I do it in 2 buckets.
Okay.
Some are, attributes that you have that you can't educate around.
Mm,
You got to have those attributes inherently as a leader.
mm,
Okay. You got to have the drive. You have to have the intelligence, the integrity. Basically, you have to have that character and flexibility, okay,
Mm,
that is rare. Now, those attributes you can't get at the Ross School or at any entrepreneur school. You
mm,
have to have those, okay? And so those are not learned, but you have to have some of these skills as well, okay? The skill set, that you got to go. You have to know all aspects of business. I call it the connect the dots.
mm,
So you know that how everything of an operating company works, okay? How it goes from development to manufacturing, production, quality control, sales, the whole cycle, and connect the dots. And you have to, it's better if you also know how the financials interlink.
mm.
It's
And
also
these are things that we can learn, that we can learn
right.
how a
You can
business
learn those.
works.
You can learn listening.
Mm,
Okay. Communication skills are key for that leader in my mind. But listening is the number one.
mm,
Um, you got no negotiations. You have to decision making. If you're in analysis paralysis, you're on your own. I won't help you.
mm.
Okay. Um, you got to have life science balance. Okay. And so you got to have skill sets, even though I really probe on the attributes as well. The
Mm. And the
higher you go,
attributes are the things that we just have innately or
yeah,
don't have innately.
you either got drive or you don't.
Mm,
Okay. And your drive could be for money, it could be for success. Okay. It could be necessity. I don't care why you have that drive. I just got to have it.
mm.
If you don't, if you're happy with your lifestyle the way it is, that's fantastic. Go do something else in a startup.
Mm. So
Does
we've
that
got
make
these,
any sense?
yeah, absolutely. So you're saying we've got these attributes that are sort of inherent, and then we got these skills that we can learn. I know some that you had mentioned before were like about the operations, how to manage cash flow. You just mentioned listening.
Those are lucky strikes. You got to have those attributes.
Mm,
The learn stuff you can learn either during a startup or before a startup. But those you can, if you have the intelligence that I had in the attributes,
mm,
you can pick up the other stuff um, in while you're doing a startup. And I
mm.
have.
And
I've
so in
done
your experience, you don't see a lot of people who their level of drive or their level of intelligence or their level of integrity changes dramatically for the better over the course of a career.
that does not change.
Mm.
Sorry about bad to the bone.
I love it. Now we know what your ringtone is. So
Okay, so
this
that's
is the quality of leadership. Um, I think the next one you had there was the uniqueness of the product or
well,
service.
yeah, and this is getting a lot of and everyone sort of focuses on how unique your product or service is, and you got
Mm,
to have some uniqueness. It doesn't, whether it's patented or not. It could be a trade secret. It could be just you can make it at half the price, at half the cost of
mm,
someone else in your space. Um, but in the life sciences, it's usually some unique piece of it. Now, my experience is in the tool space,
mm,
software, hardware, um, just because I don't have that 50-year life cycle of um, drugs,
mm,
therapeutics. I stay out of therapeutics. Um, but no, so you got to have that uniqueness. Could be cost, could be service that's unique. It doesn't have to be patentable. It's better if it is. Um, but that uniqueness has got to be focused up front. Okay.
mm,
Now I got Tom Kinnear stuck me with one startup. It's probably Michigan's oldest startup, Nanocerex. They started up because, hello, our uniqueness is we have a nice material. Okay, who's going to buy it? What's it good for? Dumb startup. Okay, they did not. They had a new material, unique material, but who are we going to sell it to? So we've been looking for 25 years. And we finally have 5 different uses, but it just come up in the last 5 years. Tom Kinnear started it up, sucked me in about 12 years ago. And then he backed out about 6 years ago, left me holding the bag. But it's doing well. It's back from the dead. But that was a bad startup. They had no customers, which brings me to my third bucket.
Can I keep you on the second bucket though? 'Cause I
Yeah.
think there's something fascinating here, and I'm interested in your perception on it, Walt, because when we talk about value, I mean, it's a good thing that we're talking about value. And like you said, we do hear people talking about it. We do have people saying, talk to your customers, ICOR and things like that, where they're making people do the legwork to get out and talk to potential customers. So that's great. I think one thing that we see though is that there's still frequently a chasm. So the days are diminishing that you described where where academia says we've got this great technology, we have no idea about the market. We're at least asking that question now. But when I look at this chasm between, who's actually qualified to know what the needs are? Well, sometimes it's the folks at the big companies who are seeing, thousands of clients. They're seeing M&A activity. They know exactly where, if I could just have this concept, I could plug it in right here. But the big companies, as you and I both know, they don't develop. They are much too risk averse to develop. And then way over on the other side, I've got a startup and it's saying, well, I'm going to do my best to do market discovery and figure out where my product fits. But frequently it's very hard for them to get access to real data about that, which is usually sitting at large companies and their marketing departments. I mean, I guess at some level, Walt, who is actually qualified to go out and do this kind of thing? How do you even get the guts to do it as a startup if all the data is really living at the big business side, but the big business side isn't qualified to do the development? There's a chasm there. How do we?
Oh,
how do
no,
we
but
solve that?
that's an opportunity.
Mm,
Okay. And
okay.
in life sciences, what you described is pretty standard.
Mm,
Okay. The big companies know the customers, have the data, and they know the holes that they don't have. Okay. But they cannot create shit. Okay. They cannot innovate within their organizations. Now, I'm generalizing, but so it's an opportunity for startups. And now it's best if the founder has some connection with a big company
mm,
where they came out of, okay? And even know, which I'm trying to think is Celsi, John Stark, when we brought that in, he knew the connection.
mm,
And Jeff Williams, when he came in Accuray, knew those connections. And that was neat because it the holes were noticed, but that started the pre-selling of the exit. Okay. So it was a twofer. We were filling your customers' needs, but you were also seeing the value of our instrument or solution. Okay. And so that's builds value and builds a buzz to get to your eventual exit. So no, it's a neat opportunity. So you got to hope that the big life science tools corporations don't ever get smart and develop stuff on their own, which looks like a pretty fair assumption, I got to tell you. Um,
So you're saying that
and
a
they,
lot of,
on the
oh,
other
good.
hand, in the last 2 decades, have used purchasing of startups as their development. It's a
Mm,
very efficient way for them. It's like Microsoft did on the IT. It's more efficient, less risk to buy people that have some traction than do it yourselves. And so it's become a way of life for, you know, Thermo Fisher, aluminum, BD, Bio-Rad, Danaher. They all rely on that development cycle that you described. So
and they can
instead of
stay
making,
outside of the risk at that point until
oh
the
yeah,
time comes for M&A.
it's a win-win. It works on their model. It works for startups.
We've often thought in the community about multiple levels of CEO, and we've often thought in terms of two levels of CEO, because we've, as you just described, sometimes if the second CEO can bring a lot of those network connections to the big companies, that's great. But you actually said there's at least three levels
Yeah,
that you think of leadership. So help us out there.
it's at least three.
Okay.
Okay. And I make the analogy to baseball. Not that I have any baseball, but you got your starter and you got your mid-inning pitcher and you have your closer.
Mm,
Those three are three different operational phases for the CEO. And many can do it, like Jen Barrett. She did the first two, but Jeff Williams, we brought in as a closer.
mm,
Um, it's rare that one individual can do all three of those phases.
mm,
Okay. Um, the development phase is one set of skills. The ramp up is more of a manufacturing operational startup and commercialization. And the exit is an exit.
mm.
Um, different skills. But that second phase, now you get me off on a tangent, going from that first to second is the most dangerous. Going from the startup development to the commercialization, I found is the most risky area of any startup.
Mm.
It's tough for a development company to turn into a commercialization. Dealing with different people, different staff, different organization. It's rare. Now, Jen Bear did it, but others it's tougher. And you got to recognize it had to be an insurance opportunity I turned down. Sorry about that. But no, that commercialization is a key thing. And I usually cover that in my first discussion with the founder.
Mm.
I'm saying, are you open to, are you think you can do it or not? And if not, are you open to transfer? You ready to report to someone else? Do you have that capability? And
That
if
sort of
not,
trans that sort of transitions into your adult supervision one. It's sort of a
yeah,
meta adult supervision one.
oh, it does.
Take
No,
us take us
here we
there.
missed
Oh,
my
we got to go
third
back to
one.
customer focus. Okay,
Customer
good.
focus. We covered a lot of that. If you aren't customer focused in the development stage, like I said with Nanocerix, uh, the and it may be wrong, but you got to have a assumption or theory of what your service or product, who they're going to sell to. And the quicker, and you said it, the quicker you can tie into actual users,
Mm,
the better off you are in development. All right. If you can get a group of actual users to guide you in your development building up your IT, hardware, software, the better off you are, the more efficient you are, and the less risk moving to the commercialization. So if you are customer focused, and the famous examples of that is Starbucks and FedEx, and that goes back 30 years or more, 3-4 decades. But, I would not have invested in them 4 decades ago. Someone came to me and said, "You're going to sell coffee." Sure. But they knew their customer, and that was all customer driven. So was FedEx. That's famous. People that turn down investing. Oh yeah, you're going to compete with the U.S. Post Office. Sure. Yeah, we'll make money at that. But
when we were looking at the vaccine distribution plan that the government had, we were noting that the shipping companies listed on their one-pager didn't include the USPS, but FedEx was one of them. So
UPS, they East and West.
Yep.
One did West and one did East now. But no, that customer focus, it's not just reserved for when you want ready to sell it. You need it in the design phase. And then in the commercialization phase, it's not just the salesman. It's everybody in your organization has got to be united around the goal to amaze the customer, not just keep them happy. You got to dazzle them. It doesn't matter if you're in receivables, payables, inventory, whatever. You want to amaze that customer. If you can pack your reagents better, easier to make that customer happier, that's what you all have to do. And it's a uniting role.
When you said that, and when we were talking earlier, Walt, I got to thinking, so many of us we're holding on through the pandemic, and we're looking for that next level of inspiration. And I thought, wow, that's a really great message for folks at this point in the slog, is that basic business reality hasn't gone away. So you want something to focus on.
Yeah.
How can I amaze my customer? That'd be a great thing to be asking this spring.
Yep. Or why wait? Okay. Do it now. There's nothing like the urgent. But let's get back to my fourth and final bucket.
Okay.
Adult supervision. And I hit this up front. It's not something that does, but every entity needs to have a boss or a counterbalance. And I'm not talking advisory board. Those are crap. I'm talking a fiduciary board that can hire and fire the founder. Okay. That's not their purpose, not to fire. But the purpose is that they listen to adult supervision. It's usually a fiduciary board. It's best if it is. And it's not to run the company. I like the slogan of the National Association of Corporate Directors: nose in, fingers out. Is what a director got to know what's going on, but does not run. Every director runs through the CEO or president. Okay, got to know what's going on, but as a counterbalance to that, because we all need, it's lonely as a founder. Okay. And sometimes we get off on tangents, and it's good to have a counterbalance of saying, have you thought, usually with someone with knowledge or experience, they are both, and even with bucks, all three would help. If you got experience, knowledge, and bucks, the founder will listen. But they need that balance. I've turned down a couple of opportunities I looked at in the last couple, just because the founder was stubborn never not to have adult supervision for good reason and from their standpoint. One was just lazy. He had a good lifestyle, making enough money. He didn't want to grow or do anything. I said, good luck, have a nice lifestyle. The other was a very rich founder, and he wanted to be a more philanthropy.
Mm.
And that didn't feed with my alignment as greed and grow. Um, no, so, but that's how I screen. You don't have to have adult supervision, but you don't get my money.
Mm.
And so but it's good to be aligned. And it's not just the ones, directors got to be aligned with the founder and the earlier, I think you asked me the other day, Gene, what stage I jump in. I like to get in earlier than later because it's cleaner. Before a founder raises money on 25 different terms, that's a mess to clean up. And that, in my mind, that's a waste of time because anything that takes away from you as a founder to focus on development, commercialization is a waste of time. Politics are a waste of time. Cleaning up your mess that you made before we got involved, that's a waste of time. And that's not good. You don't need any wasted time or energy or money on a startup. So no, that's key to me. It's sort of a cross check on the founder, whether their ego motivations are not aligned. But it's also good for all the inevitable speed bumps that occur.
Ways you've got a pre-made team there that's naturally invested in you and wants to see you succeed, and they're willing to help at that point. That's got to be part of it.
Most life science, the ones I've been involved in, Acri, Swift, Celsi, you have between 6 and 18 rounds of financing, and you usually have 20 different shit moments through that process of 7 to 10 years. And you need a director or a team to help you through those financially, mentally, with experience. And those are valuable.
That's good advice. Well, we've talked thus far about your criteria when you're looking at companies, but people have not heard about your model, which I think itself deserves some interest because when you're not a VC, you don't operate like a VC, you don't have a firm, and yet this is when you go to invest in something, well, this is more than just you. So how does this work?
Okay. This started about 20 years ago when I couldn't go. And it started.
My question is, have you taken golf lessons since? I mean, is that part of your part of your lifestyle thing? Are you trying to get the golf game up, or?
No, I have supported many trainers, golf pros. I've torn up some of the best courses in the country.
Good divots all over the place.
I got divots. They come behind me, put irrigation in. But anyhow, no, my model, and Acri, I learned a lot 17 years ago. But I share the risk, okay? And so my model is if they pass the first hour and a half and a couple other due diligence, what I do is to put together a two-page email, send it out to probably 60 of my high net worth friends and said, here's the return sheet. Well, you're in or you're out. The first round's going to be a minimum of 25 or 50,000. Get back to me, and they all know that they're passive angels. I'm an active angel, as you maybe figured out. I'm also a passive, by the way. But but in most of the ones I've talked about, I was the active. So I'm a board member or chairman of the startup. So it's really the founder. I raise the money. I raise all the other 14 rounds, bring in other people. But so it's Friends of Walt has been called a network that works well. They know they're passive. If they start bugging the CEO, I slap their wrist. They get quarterly statements, and they're well disciplined. And so that's the funding. On the flip side, it keeps my focus even more than my money. Friends' money is more motivation. I protect my friends' money more than my own. And so that motivates me to keep focused.
That's interesting. That's your adult oversight.
It's my adult, okay?
Yeah.
It's my cross check to stay focused. And so then I enjoy being involved in the operational startup as well as the financial. When to do rounds, when to bring in VCs. And so my group, in many ways, well, I even looked at starting up a VC, a few of us 20 years ago, and thank God we didn't. Are the 3 or 4 people that I looked at, none of us had the key skills of administration, or more importantly, we just didn't suck up to other investors, which VCs you have to. And VCs have the other problem. They have to invest in within a certain time period, and they have to exit. Okay, those are artificial barriers. Where my group, we don't care. Like I said, we got 3 companies operating that we hope we never sell. They're throwing off so much cash. And so where a VC couldn't do that, they'd have to exit.
They've got a distinct plan as to how that's gonna go through.
And so, and VCs over the last 20 years have gone bigger, since many of them didn't perform and had to drop out. The survivors have had to get very large, get bigger, get later in the cycle, and where it's less risk. And they do a great job, but they're like the mezz loaners of 20 years ago. And so that hurts startups. And so at the front end, and I got to tell you, angels have gotten more conservative too. They're looking for minimal risk. They've learned how to do their due diligence. They got, like I do, they got their list of criteria. It's tougher.
A lot more people are becoming more conservative in their use of
funds.
Oh
yeah.
I want to give a minute here for our audience to ask any questions they may have, Walt. And then I want to get back to one more thing, which is your definition of crisis, which we're going to come back to here in just a minute, which I thought was profound. But we had one from Francis, which is, what is Walt investing in lately?
Well, I've told you what I haven't. Let's see.
Any areas that you're particularly interested in?
Yeah, in the last 60 days, they've both been passive investments. A startup alum out of Wisconsin, a great guy that's an IT. It's a website for music, for musicians. So yeah, front end as a passive investor, I knew the people and trusted, and so yeah, I invested in that. Let's see, what else could I do? I've been the last 60 days. It's been quite active. I'm more active in SPACs, which doesn't apply to your audience, but it's for electronic vehicle startups is the hot space right now, and it's SPACs, and So I'm a passive investor that actually understands the many risk spots of that run. So that's been really active in the last 60 days and probably the next 8 months.
And what you told us earlier is that you're not investing in drugs because of in the MedTech space, you're not investing in drugs because of the long time horizon. You are investing in tools, but you also don't have the criteria that a VC has where you've got to be out on a certain date.
No, see, I got other alternatives to invest in. And so, no, I don't have to invest in startups. I can go into, like you say, these structured finance for EV SPACs. Trying to think the other one I went into.
While you're thinking about it, may come to you. We got a question here from Ken Spencer. I'll put him live here with us. Ken, you're live with us.
Thank you.
Question for Walt.
Thanks very much. Great information. So my question is, in terms of flexibility and crisis that you've been through, have you been through some significant pivots in the companies you've been with? I seem to recall Accuracy Cytometer went through a significant pivot, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, no, Accuracy didn't pivot. They had their down rounds and oh shit moments. But no, it was pretty consistent for the 7 years, Ken. Their first customer assumption held through to the exit. But no, I've been involved in pivots before they were called that. Okay. That's only a word here in the last decade. But I've had the aw shit moments of saying, hey, our model doesn't work. What do we do now? Oh, I know. Accuracy could be a pivot. The technology that came out of U of M, here's a little tidbit. It was designed, the engineering was designed to be an instrument to detect environmental wastewater.
Right.
Okay.
That's what I remember. Yeah.
There you go. And so that was a pivot before they got $1. David Olson said, I think this technology might work on blood. And so no, that was 2003. So that was a thought pivot before anyone invested.
But interesting distinction that you make between a down round where you might be saying we've sort of identified that our valuation wasn't quite where we thought it was, versus a pivot where we're saying, and so we got to go through that valley and we got to climb back out of it, versus a pivot where you're saying,
right,
wait, hold on, we're not even going in the right direction, change direction. We're not getting
you got it,
Jane.
Those are two different memorable stages in a startup
company's life. Ken, thanks for the question. Did that get you?
Did I help you, Ken?
Yes, thank you, Walt.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. I'll give another minute here for any other questions that you may have for Walt, and then right after that, we're going to have any questions related to anything we've covered on the show as we wrap up here in just another minute. But Walt, I want to go over to you for a second on this question of crisis. You gave me a wonderful definition of crisis, and I think I want to leave the audience with that today.
No, decades ago, I even forget who told me this. The Chinese, in their writing, the word for the characters for crisis, there's two characters. One is danger, and the second one is opportunity. So through the Chinese, crisis is both of those. It's danger, losing everything, but it's also an opportunity. So no, they had that long ago. In fact, I pulled out about a decade ago. I had this done. Whoa.
And pull it back a little ways. There you go. A little further back. Perfect.
There you go. So I'm told this is crisis. Now, I got to tell you, the guy that did this for me, it may be some bitch. Okay. So I've not had it authentic. I'm not sure if it's authenticity. So be aware how you spread this. But these two characters, this is a danger, this is an opportunity, I'm told. But more importantly is the concept of crisis is not necessarily a bad thing. And we all 10 months ago had, now almost 11, had that brought right in our face. And you've seen all the opportunity and change that came out of that crisis. It's amazing the creativity. And in many areas, we've gone 5 years in advancement. Now it's had certain groups had danger and have gone away, but it's been an opportunity for many people. In fact, at Squawk Box this morning, there's another example of crisis. There's this VoxDocs startup that handles signing up for vaccines and works in New York and is working in New York. They sort of had it was almost a commercial for them, for doctors, hospitals to sign up how to have the software to get the vaccines.
It is amazing the amount of creativity that pops out when people are presented with those.
You know, that's an opportunity for a crisis. And we've seen that both in the life sciences. Swift has 2 products they didn't have 11 months ago, and selling millions of books at, which has been a win-win. Revenue for them, solutions for the industry.
Well, that's a great anecdote with the term there. We're at the top of the hour. Folks are going to be dropping off here in just a second. I do want to field the questions that we have here. There is one more question here in our chat from David Derbyshire. Are pitch competitions with minimal prize sponsorships, less than 10K, good places for learning about angel investing and building instincts, or is it better to just jump in with a trusted advisor like yourself? I'm also interested in the answer to this question because we just announced that we're doing a little informal pitch competition to let people try their stuff out and get feedback on it. But yeah, what do you think? Should people be doing minimal pitch competitions to build instincts, or should they be just seeking out mentors?
No, I avoid pitch. This is probably not what you want me to say.
I don't mind. We're going for the truth here, Walt. That's what we're going for always.
No, pitch competitions are good practice in communications. But I stay away from for 2 reasons. The people that perform crappy, it's a bad place to judge them. Okay, I hate to judge them just on their communication skills. I like as I said, the private sector. On the other hand, the ones that really perform well at those pitch deals, I'm afraid they're just good pimps. Okay, that there's no depth to them. So yeah, you probably don't want to hear that.
No, we want the truth. We're trying to build community here, Walt. So no, we appreciate.
So I stay away from those because for either reason, either well-rehearsed, shallow people or unrehearsed, quality people, I've stayed away from them. Sorry about that.
Basic concern there. I think it's a great thing that you're saying, which is the pitch competitions tend to turn into something where one's presentation ability or lack thereof makes the whole thing, not the business argument, which is what we've been spent all day today talking about, is the business argument.
Exactly, and the inherent motivations of the founder, of the leader.
That's great. We've got another question here from John. Do you have any memorable examples or lessons learned related to product blind spots, new competition appearing, technology failures, etc.?
Oh yeah, no, that's why I have that customer focused
Hmm.
piece on that. That's how I learned that the hard way. If you are constantly in contact with your target user, you'll be blindsided on incoming competition, incoming performance requirements. If you don't have your instant connection with the market as it is, you're going to be blindsided all the time.
Mm.
And blindsided is expensive.
I was going to
So,
ask you, Walt, how you said it was an expensive set of lessons that these 4 topics were. At some point, we got to have you tell us about what the price tag on all those lessons was as a
oh,
package,
I
or if we
know
buy them piecemeal.
I've repressed all that. Uh, but most of them bring to down runs, which, by the way, I like down runs.
Mm.
If I have a good understanding of the leader, their uniqueness, I see them as opportunities instead of danger, unlike most angels. And my network follows along.
Mm.
Um,
Very
so,
good.
yeah.
I'm looking to see if we have any other questions. I haven't seen any more hands go up. I'll give you another 5 seconds, folks, if there's any other questions you want to ask for Walt. Um, Otherwise, we're going to go here in just a second to any final questions and then a close. But Walt, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your being with us today. I've certainly learned a lot from you. When we do this pitch party, it's going to come as the event that Walt said don't attend. That's going to be the billing, and but what we are going to do is we're going to use these questions that you've asked today, and we're going to force this on people. So you can rest assured that we're going to keep preaching the 4 points here to folks and make them squirm when we get there.
And good luck to you, Gene, and all the group.
We really appreciate your
You're in
time
a good
today.
space, but it's a challenge and you need character.
Well, thank you for that, sir, and thank you for being here. And we wish you all the best in your successes. And we will look forward to the next time that we connect.
Take care.
Thanks, Walt. And for the
Thank you.
audience, we will give you just a couple more seconds. If you have any questions or comments about vaccines or the pitch party or anything else that we've talked about today or on any show, I'll give you about 5 more seconds for that. But if we don't see any hands go up here in the next few seconds, we are really looking forward to seeing you next week. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time on MedTech Crossroads. Bye-bye.